Okay, we're live at the Kansas City Coalition for Digital Inclusion, but this is what happens and kind of why we get together once a month. There's networking, catch up, introductions, follow up that people are doing. So bear with us a minute if you're watching. Say hello in the comments, ask any questions you might have, and we'll go from there. Let me see if I can get Carrie's attention. Carrie! Carrie Coogan. Hello. Carrie Coogan. You're live. Your audience awaits. Hey Bob, how you doing? Hi, how are you, Diana? Good to see you. We're live on Facebook here too, so we got. Hi, Coco. How are you? Bob Akers is watching from Seattle. He'll be here next week. His daughter's getting married. Congrats.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Clemens.
Hello. Oh, well, welcome. Welcome. Oh, Lazone Graves from Topeka has joined us. Ever met Lazone? So, Lazone and Bob, you know how this group works. There's just a lot more socializing, networking happening here this morning. We're going to get started here in a bit. All right. How are you? Oh yeah, I got it. Best Buy maybe, or It's easy to use.
Good morning. Good morning.
How was everybody today?
Oh, it's Friday.
I think we're going to get started. We're going to good.
Oh, you've been on for 10 minutes. Everyone.
Knows we're in the front is broadcasting live via Facebook, so just want you to be aware that what happens in this room does not stay in this room.
Yeah.
Right, we want to be a transparent organization. So I'm Carrie Coogan, and I'm Deputy Director of the Library and President of the Coalition. I want to thank you all so much for being here. And I say this every time, but I just want you to remember that if you're coming to this meeting, you think that there's somebody else that should be coming that you know, whether you're a provider or a practitioner or just an interested citizen of the world, this meeting is open to anyone and everyone, so please let your constituents know. Is there anybody here for the very first time? Oh, great. And do you have any new Facebook?
Well, our friend Lazone Graves, Topeka, Bob Akers, Seattle, and William Wells here in town are watching. Ron Green. So this is why I was pushing you to get started. Ron Green's like, hey, when are we going to get started? He's going to watch online too.
Great, now we're being bossed around by people.
And then Bob says we may have some folks from Rhode Island tuning in.
Oh, great, wonderful. Okay. So a couple of housekeeping things. So if you're here for the first time, our coalition has been meeting for close to 5 years now, I think, here at this location, first Friday at 2:30 every morning. And this is our mission and our vision. When you come in, if you haven't, please sign in. That's also where you can get your parking validated. You can park across the street. If you want the Wi-Fi network, it's library network, and then the password is historic. Here's how you can work with us in social media. And if there is anybody from the steering council, we have our own steering council for the coalition. If you're a steering council member, would you please stand up? Great. These are people who, steering council members have basically come over from the founding council. So these are people who've been working on this coalition for about 4 or 5 years. Okay, so there's a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about before we have our guest speaker, which is Jeremy Hegle from the Fed. But this is basically our agenda for the day. So the main thing I wanted to talk to you about is Digital Inclusion Week that's coming up, the week of May 7th through the 11th. And I just want to make sure it's on everybody's radar so that we can, as a group, if there's something that we want to work on together, if not, just make sure that you're getting the information up on the site and putting in all of your events for that week and participating. Wendy Pearson from the library, do you want to stand up quickly and talk about some of the things that you're working on? And then if there is an interest in our group doing something collectively together on one specific day during that week, we're open to doing that as well.
So in case you're not aware already, the Southeast branch of the Kansas City Public Library is going to kind of have a reopening ceremony to celebrate all the construction and the completion of the new digital media lab. And that's on April 28th, a Saturday from 10 to 2. And during that time, several of our tech coach volunteers will be there to kind of do a lightning round mock classes to kind of give people an idea of some of the classes and learning opportunities that we offer at the library. And so we're going to, it's timed just perfectly, we're going to actually host a lot of those classes that we feature during that opening ceremony for Digital Inclusion Week. And everybody's invited to the reopening too, so put it on your calendar, it's going to be fun.
Thank you, Wendy. And I'm passing around a information sheet. You can go to the website, National Digital Inclusion, you can find out more. But basically, it is a nationwide event that's happening online and on the ground in this community, but it's nationwide. So you can see on the sheet I just passed around that there's a lot of events that we could do together or we could do on our own if we didn't have the time or the capacity to do it as a group. There's digital resource fairs, more outreach, device donation drives, one-day workshops, resume rally, open house. There's a lot of things we can do. So I'll be reaching out via email, again, following up on this, but really wanted to just get it on your radar, make sure you know about it, think about what your organization might be willing or able to do that week, and then we can try to coordinate together. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Okay, our next meeting, first Friday, May 4th. And then I just wanted to, before we do introductions, were there any other events or updates that anybody wanted to contribute at this time? Next month? Okay.
Can we know who's going to Net Inclusion Summit?
Aaron asked if we know, is there anybody in the room who's attending Net Inclusion? It's the summit that is put on by NDIA, and it's in Cleveland, Ohio this year, starting the week of April 15th, I believe. I'm going.
Yep.
Jeremy's going, Rikasha's going. Great. Are you going?
I can't.
Okay.
And then-
I think Cal's going, and I don't know how you think they're going to go.
And then N10 next week in New Orleans.
That's right. So there's an N10 conference next week in New Orleans, and Rick Usher is going and presenting with McLean, Brian, and Bob Akers, right?
Bob is watching online. He's involved in his daughter's wedding.
Bob's not going.
So Bob has higher priorities right now.
And then I'm presenting on our...
Wait, Bob wrote, he just wrote, I'll be there. Does that mean you'll be in New Orleans, Bob? Like if you mean yes.
Okay, so before I introduce Jeremy, then can we go around the room and we'll do introductions. If you don't mind, could you please stand up, say your name and the organization you're affiliated with, and then also you just take a moment to tell us why you're here and a little bit about the work that you're doing at your organization. So let's start with the wonderful David Crone.
Hi, David Crone. I work with Carrie here at the Kansas City Public Library. I've been involved with the group pretty much since the beginning and just provide some general support to the steering committee for the monthly meetings.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bell. You may remember me from my work at CKC when I was a digital inclusion fellow. I'm back because I miss you all, but I'm actually also here to introduce my friend who's involved, wanting to get involved with this coalition.
Hi, I'm Sarah's friend. My name is Chad O'Brien. I'm a web developer in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm going to be relocating to Kansas City in the next couple of months. And I recently have been affiliated with KU's Area Study Centers, working with outreach and education opportunities. And I heard amazing things about this from Sarah. Seemed like a good opportunity, and I wanted to meet some people doing the same sort of work in Kansas City.
I'm Brian Booth, a private citizen. I'm a member of Big Hill Community Council, and just a curious citizen here to see what's going on.
Hello, I'm Dr. Clement. This is my first time here. Founder and Executive Director of Future Leaders Outreach Network. Our headquarters is on 31st and Linwood and I-71, and we have an office that we expanded in Arlington, Texas, October 2015. We teach adolescents and teens and young people to set boundaries from the risk behaviors, the drugs, the alcohol, violence, and premature sexual activity so they stay focused on pursuing their dreams. So we teach them soft skills on how to prepare a resume, how to interview, and introduction to leadership development and entrepreneurship. And I'm in the process of working with a group of people to launch Dreams Academy, which is a career and technology education center. So I'm glad to be here and to learn more about how our program and our agency can benefit and how we can add value to the coalition. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Ina Montgomery. My company is Urban Tech. TEC is the acronym for Technology Empowered Communities. I work with schools on teaching teachers how to integrate technology in the classroom, and I work on with urban students on introducing them to 21st century technology skills to get them ready for the workplace.
Rick Usher, City Manager's Office. You.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Wade. I'm with Connecting for Good. I'm the new development coordinator at AmeriCorps Vista. I just started that position a couple weeks ago, so this is my first time here. So I'm excited to kind of get plugged in, see what all we have going on in the area. At Connecting for Good, we are just now kicking off a great after-school STEM program at our KCK lab. We also are paired up with KC Women in Technology to do a monthly Coder Dojo. So we have a lot going on, so good to meet you all.
I like your new camera, Rick.
Oh, thanks.
Matt Ziegenhorn, Mind Drive. We're an after-school program for high school students from Kansas, Missouri areas, Jackson, Johnson, and Wyandotte County. Serve about 22 different high schools in the metro area. They come to us for project-based learning. We're here in the coalition in support of the efforts we can't serve every kid in the city, so we want to make sure that we are connected with those that can reach the ones that we can.
Hi, I'm Bob Henderson with Verizon, and we do have a little bit of an opportunity through the Verizon Innovative Learning. Now through April 15th, we can go on and nominate our favorite middle schools to be eligible for Verizon Innovative Learning. It provides technology and curricula for middle schools. And again, now that's through April 15th. Go to Verizon.com on Twitter and retweet the pet. Okay.
Can we nominate the middle school, or is it up to you?
No, it's nominate your own middle school. It's not me.
John Mahoney, I'm with Verizon as well, and I'm just participating with Bob on this.
Good morning, David Biggins. I'm the Director of IT for the Housing Authority of Kansas City, and I am here to work with a lot of great people in this room that provide services and resources for some of the low-income families in the area.
That got a lot of likes. Yeah, it's kind of, oh, now.
Good morning, I'm Bill Mullins. I am a one-man band under the banner of the Kessler Institute. Part of what I do is get around to see what's going on, work to connect people. And in that regard, I just want to make a quick shout out. Down at the Spring Accelerator today, I think it's the fourth mega challenge is going on. And I think there's a very important intersection. Maddie Rhodes has presented the problem challenge, and it has to do with their in-school support for mental health, and specifically how might the students, there's about 100 of them down there, come up with ideas to overcome the stigma of asking or accepting or working with mental health, particularly in our challenge schools, and problems like cyberbullying and so on. So it's kind of the flip side of opportunity challenge. And I just want to mention that they're down there till about 1:45 today. So if you have a little time after this meeting, you want to stop in, I'm sure that you'll learn something useful.
Thanks.
Good morning, I'm Coco Lawson with Google Fiber, and I work as a community manager for Rachel Merle. We partner with a lot of nonprofits and startups in order to deliver STEM programming in the community.
Good morning, Rachel Merle, Google Fiber. In addition to the programming that Coco mentioned, we've also made several capital investments around Kansas City in the last 6 years to increase access. And as Bill gave us a nice plug, I'm going to be heading out of here in about 30 minutes to go judge these fantastic presentations at Mega Challenge, and I'm pretty jazzed about it.
Great.
And Rachel is back from maternity.
I have a beautiful baby. Congratulations. Thank you.
I have not had a baby recently. My name is Chris Allen. I am the program manager for the Quest Academy with Goodwill, and the Quest Academy is designed specifically to assist our clientele with job placement and education related to job placement. We're going to be starting a digital literacy program designed specifically to help job seekers find jobs and gain training that they may need to be able to be more employable. Some basic computer classes and basic software classes, things like that. So I'll be facilitating those. We are working also with Connected for Good to make sure we carry some of those partnerships around off of a part of a grant from Google. So we're kind of working with as many people as we can to make those connections. So it's nice to be here. It's my first time here as well.
Great, thank you.
My name is Justin Horton. I'm the director at Cornerstones of Care. We're a large behavioral health and child and family services nonprofit, but I'm not going to tell you about me or Cornerstones today. I'm just going to do a little plug. I'm wearing blue today, not just for our beloved Kansas City Royals, but Hegle is officially Child Abuse Prevention Month. So there's lots of activities in Kansas City that go on every Friday. I encourage you to wear blue. Today is the official Go Blue Day to create awareness, as it's many bright-minded people in here who are influential. So we encourage you every Friday this month to wear blue and talk to people while you're wearing blue, because it's our responsibility to recognize, prevent, and report child abuse. Thank you.
I'm Susan Norris with EchoSelect. EchoSelect is a business and IT consulting and staffing firm, and we are here to support the community wherever we can.
I'm Michael Lumata, and we run a program for ex-offenders and people overcoming substance use at our Recovery Community Center at 45th and Foods.
And I'm Wendy Pearson, formerly also a digital inclusion fellow. I served with Sarah's cohort. And I'm now permanently employed by the library to continue that work I started through the fellowship. And I'm basically coordinating programs and resources to help our adult patrons develop basic digital literacy skills and some of those workforce development skills that increase employability.
Hi, I'm Chuck Dion. I am a part of the Kansas City Public Library Tech Coach program. I'm the lead tech coach, and I assist in patrons developing job skills as well as any other technology questions they have.
Hello, I'm Zoreen Zavino. I'm the Tech Coach Volunteer Coordinator, and I coordinate volunteers such as Chuck at Northeast, Southeast, Plaza, and occasionally here at Central. Tomorrow is actually the Teen Volunteer Job Fair at the Plaza Library from 10 to 12, I believe. And if you have any teenagers that would like more experience with volunteering, or if they need help with resume building, we will be there. We'll have a table. If you just want to say hi, it'll be a great time.
My name is Alexis Burns. I work alongside Wendy and Chuck and Zoe here at the Public Library. I am the Learning Circles coordinator.
So our goals with that program are to connect our patrons with databases that the library has access to that have all of these free courses on them, and it's my job to schedule those courses for our patrons to be able to take them. We have a basic Spanish class going on right now, a vegetable gardening 101 class going on. Both of those are at Ruiz Library, and then I'm working on a job skills learning circle for formerly incarcerated patrons at the Blueprint Bridge.
I'm Stacey Griffith. I'm the project manager at KC Digital Drive, and I'm also at AmeriCorps Vista. We support Kansas City becoming a digital leader by supporting projects that are civic and education projects around Kansas City, and helping support pilot projects and ones that are trying to do social good.
Hi, I'm Bailey Overman. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista here at the library. I'm the digital literacy curriculum developer here, and I just started 2 weeks ago. This is my 3rd week, so this is my first time here. So I'm basically here to learn about what's going on.
Hi, I'm Becca Rendell, also an AmeriCorps Vista here at the library, in our Refugee and Immigrant Services and Empowerment Division. And we're working on incorporating technology into some of our English classes and some of our one-to-one opportunities to encourage our refugee and immigrant patrons to use the technology available at the library to build those skills.
And for those of you that may not know, our AmeriCorps Vista team is not just responsible for programs and services here at the library, but for all our 10 branches which span the footprint of the Kansas City, Missouri School District. So they're spread out doing programs, not just in our branches, but also in community centers and connecting for good locations and low-income housing properties and costs. So they're working here in the library system, but also in the community as well. See,
Hi there, I'm Mary King Morrow, and I'm with Literacy KC. We offer free reading, writing, math, digital classes, and this summer we're going to be introducing ELL classes. We have a lab with 20 computers in it. We're open most days of the week, except for Sunday. And we have helpers there if people need help on projects that they're working on. In addition to that, we have basic and advanced classes weekly. So I'm here to meet more of you and to collaborate to further digital education. Thank you.
Good morning, I am Jacqueline Wilkins, I'm from the Urban League of Greater Kansas City, and recently we got grant from Spectrum to do digital workshops for our clients and in the community, so that's fun.
That's great, congratulations.
Good morning, I'm Jessica Lee, in your neighborhood association, and I'm here to our like digital solutions for the next neighbors.
My name is Tommy Watson. I'm a student at the UKC School of Law. I'm working with one of my classes. I'm working with a small group in the department that we kind of increased their digital literacy. So I decided to come check the meeting out and see what resources do work.
Good morning. I'm Graham with the Vineyard Neighborhood Association. And out here with Jessica and I came seeking further knowledge and assistance with our computer lab, and hopefully enhance our outreach program to get everybody digitally into it.
I'm Ann Murphy, obviously a Kansas City police officer, but I'm the executive director for a nonprofit called Youth Rise, which we work in the primarily northeast neighborhood of Kansas City, work with a lot of refugee and immigrant youth to try to facilitate life lessons through tutoring and sports.
Okay, everyone?
I'm Aaron Deacon, KC Digital Drive. Which Stacey introduced, we built civic capacity for the region of the advanced technology chain.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. The work you're doing is really amazing. We really appreciate it. Also, once we're finished having Jeremy speak, then we'll open up this meeting to networking and a chance for all of you to make further contact with anybody that you might have heard speak today or somebody you want to reach out to. And then we will follow up with any information about today's meeting and a follow-up email next week. Okay, so I'm really excited about our next speaker because I think many of you have discussed this both within our coalition meetings, working sessions, or maybe you've had these kinds of discussions on your own about CRAs. So that is the Community Reinvestment Act, and it's largely been how banks can help support community work that's being done in their community. And for a long time, it didn't really feel like digital initiatives or digital inclusion could fit into any CRA work or programs or projects that were happening here in Kansas City. But there's been some new legislation or new policy inclusions that have changed, and so digital inclusion is now being added to CRA, the investments that they're doing. And also, I think it's just good to have an understanding about, because many of us don't understand how exactly we can take advantage of the opportunities that are there. So one of the things that, in addition to sharing what we can all do, both as a community and as our individual organizations, Jeremy and I have been talking about moving forward on a community survey that I think we desperately need in our community that helps inform where we are today. In other words, what impact are we having, both collectively and individually? What are our goals for the next 5 years? What things are working, what's not working, what areas have we got covered, what areas need more help? And so that's one area that Jeremy is interested in helping us with. So we'll be pursuing that both through this organization and separately. And that ties into the community-wide broadband plan that we're working on through the library with the Shopping Coalition. So we'll have more information about that later. But for right now, I'd like to introduce Jeremy Hegle, who's a community development advisor for the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. Jeremy.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to start with giving you first a brief overview of the work that we do at the Federal Reserve Bank as it relates to community development. I've been with the Federal Reserve Bank for almost 3 years, and I still have people, my friends and family, that don't understand why the Federal Reserve is interested in these types of issues. And in general, the shortest version of that is that the Federal Reserve Bank, we believe that the economy should work for everybody. And so we recognize that in order to make sure that the economy can work for everybody, that people need access to opportunity, to financial products and services, and we want to see communities grow and prosper. And so the work we do at the Federal Reserve in community development is really focused on raising and elevating the conversation. So through outreach efforts and through some research, looking at what are those issues that are impacting low to moderate income populations, what are some innovative solutions to addressing those needs, and then also providing some clarity in terms of the regulations that were mentioned earlier, the Community Reinvestment Act. What banks can do with the Community Reinvestment Act, how community organizations can take advantage of that as well. So with that, I do want to make a couple of quick plugs for a couple things that we're working on. I was telling someone earlier, this is my 3rd time that I will be here within the next 24 hours. Tomorrow we're hosting Money Smart Day. April is Money Smart Month in Kansas City. This is the 10th year of the Money Smart Day campaign. And at Money Smart Day, it's a free event open to the public. We have a total of 12 different hour-long sessions on different financial topics. So understanding credit, understanding how to fix and repair credit if you have credit issues, basics of budgeting, how to buy a house, how to buy a car, avoiding frauds and scams, top finance apps for 2018. I'm not going to get them all, but that gives you an idea of the different topics that we have going on tomorrow. We also have volunteers that will be on site in the computer lab downstairs helping folks pull copies of their credit report, and we'll have some volunteers that can help explain the ins and outs of the credit report to people. So free event, feel free to spread the word and come down and see me again tomorrow. So something else I wanted to share, I mentioned that we do outreach and we do research on the needs of low to moderate income populations, or LMI. One of the things that we do that I would like to make you aware of is we actually survey folks that are working with low to moderate income populations. We have an LMI survey that goes out to community organization leaders. We do this twice a year and ask them essentially what are the challenges your clients are facing, and is demand for your services growing or declining. And then we'll also hone in on a couple of specific topics. It might be the impact of student loans or availability of credit. And so if you're interested in participating in the survey, we'd love to have more perspectives and voices. We use this information, we compile it, we have economists that then take this and look at how this compares to some of the other things that we're seeing from across the country. And then we share this with President George, who then takes that into consideration when she goes and they talk about whether or not we should raise interest rates. So we definitely want to hear as many perspectives as we can so that we understand what's going on in the communities. If you're interested, there are some postcards in the back that look like this. We give you instructions on how you can sign up to take the survey. We just did a survey. Probably another 4 months we'll be sending the survey out again. So with that, I'm going to turn the conversation to CRA, the Community Investment Act. And what's interesting is the regulations, when they were originally passed, were meant to be broad and flexible, recognizing that what the community in Boston needs is not necessarily what the community in Kansas City needs or what the community in Garden City needs. And so because of that flexibility, and because bankers tend to be a little risk adverse, it can get a little confusing. And this is probably where I should pause and say, my disclaimer, which these views expressed are those of my own. I do not necessarily reflect the Federal Reserve Bank or the Federal Reserve System, especially since we're is broadcasting this live. Thanks. So with that, there are some things that are easily to misunderstand about CRA. So my goal today is really to help provide you with a high-level understanding, a framework that you can understand how to work within it, and also provide you some additional resources at the end if you think CRA is something that might have some opportunities for you in working with banks. Before I get started though, I would love to know if there's any specific questions or concerns or things that you don't understand about CRA. I'd love to hear those, and then I can tailor my presentation to you as much as possible.
What does CRA stand for again, please?
Community Reinvestment Act.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are all the banks in our community required to do this, or is it optional?
So all banks have certain CRA requirements, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Definitely hit on that. Because they're not all the same. Yes?
Just like to make sure that you can comment on banks that are enthusiastic about engaging and ones that are more minimum compliance oriented.
Okay, I can talk to a certain extent about, because that's an excellent point. I mean, there are regulations, and some people look at this as a cost of doing business, right? Like it's compliance, and it's something they have to do, and they're going to do what they have to do, so they can go about their business. Other banks are going to say, you know, how can we really streamline and target our strategy around CRA so that we're making the best difference in the community and making our neighborhoods more prosperous, thereby improving our bottom line. So, yeah, anything else? Okay, so with that, let me give a little bit of a background in terms of why we had CRA and what it was intended to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure and give you some tips based on what I've heard and what I've seen in working with CRA. So to begin with, CRA came up in the late 1970s, and it was really as a result of redlining. And so redlining, for those of you that don't know, financial institutions would assess different communities to determine whether or not they should invest in those communities. And those community assessments, you can actually go online. I found some from the 1930s on Kansas City. You can go neighborhood by neighborhood and see what those assessments said. And it's very disturbing now to think that this is how business was done back then. But basically, neighborhoods were graded on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of how much a bank should be willing to invest in those neighborhoods. And a lot of times it came down to race and the income level of people that lived there. And so if your neighborhood was determined like the 5th level, no matter how creditworthy you might be, they were not going to give you money. And so we know long-term what that does to the disinvestment, right? Lack of opportunity for the individuals, the neighborhood goes downhill because nobody can get a loan, businesses can't get a loan to locate there. So a lot of really negative things come out of that. And so the Community Investment Act was passed to essentially require banks to invest in the communities in which they're located. So one thing to keep in mind there is it has to do with where they're located. And so every bank has an assessment area. And the assessment area can't be gerrymandered, right? So you can't say, well, I live at 115 Main Street, and so I'm going to serve this area, but I'm going to cut out this area over here because that's where the low-income folks live, and I just don't want to work there. It has to be sensible, so they have to serve the entire area. One reason why I share that with you is because when you're thinking about working with banks under CRA, if a bank isn't located in the area where you have a project, they're not going to get credit at their bank exam for CRA. And so just one thing to keep in mind. Also, in terms of, one question was, are all banks required to meet CRA requirements? All banks are, credit unions are different than banks. So all banks are regulated either by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the OCC, the FDIC, or the Federal Reserve Banks. And the requirements, there are three levels of requirements. So you have a small bank. The requirements are less complex. Small bank, to give you an idea, that's banks with assets under roughly $310 million. It adjusts every year. Intermediate small banks are banks that are above that 310 million or so, up to roughly 1.2 billion in assets. And then your large banks are banks that are larger than that. Now, to put that into perspective, a lot of times people think of Commerce Community as two local regional banks, and they are regional banks, but by asset size, they are considered large banks. So the bigger the bank is, the more requirements they have. So a bank, when they go to their CRA exam, they're going to get looked at on three different types of things that they might do. How many loans are they making, and are they making loans to low and moderate income populations? Are they making community development loans? Are they making small business loans and small farm loans? Those are the different types of loans they might look at. They're also graded on whether or not the degree to which they're serving the community through grants or donations, and thirdly through retail and community development services. So location of their branches, but also the services that they provide through might be volunteering services. So a bank will get some credit on their CRA exam if they have employees that are serving on boards of nonprofits, or donating equipment and donating dollars to nonprofits. Those are all things that could qualify. When we're talking about community development, there are certain types of things that the regulations outline. And so, generally speaking, efforts around workforce development, around housing, supporting small business, financial education, those are all things that typically a bank will get credit for if they're giving a grant or a loan or volunteering to a community organization serving in one of those capacities. Now, Carrie mentioned that a couple of years ago there's some clarity that was added to the regulations. So the regulations are muddy, and so there's something called the Q&A, which is the regulators do essentially a question and answer that outlines here are some types of activities that could count and how they could count. Well, those Q&As were clarified to define broadband and digital inclusion as being related to basic community services. We recognize today that broadband and digital inclusion is on par with where water and utilities were 100 years ago. It's fundamental to having a thriving community. You have to have this basic infrastructure. So the regulations were clarified to outline that activities around digital inclusion could count. Now, could count is a real key there. Just in what I briefly told you already, so a bank can get credit by working in housing initiatives and financial education and small business initiatives. There's a variety of things that banks can do, right? Well, we all know that different banks and they're people. They all have their different preferences, and some of them have very defined strategies, and they say, you know what? We always do really well on our exams our bank exams by working in housing. So we're going to continue to double down on housing. That works for us. That's great. Other banks might be more willing to try new things. And so I think that's where it's important to recognize that bankers are made up of people. And so what one bank does and what their strategy is going to be different than the next bank. And in talking to CRA officers and talking to different banks, they all have a little different philosophy that works for them and what their board wants, what their communities feel they need. And so my suggestions, I'll give you a few suggestions to work with banks if you're going to approach banks around CRA. First is to recognize that they are people, and banks are risk adverse. They're required to be somewhat risk adverse, right? And so they like to test the waters. Again, every bank's different. These are just generalizations. So, but my point is, before you go to a bank and ask them for $1 million grant, it might be good to give them a chance to get to know you and your organization. Now, keep in mind, I mentioned that one of the things that banks can get credit for is for volunteering. So, are there some ways that the banker can get to know you and your organization and your mission? Are there volunteering opportunities? Do you have needs for someone to do some technical computer training? Do you have some boards openings? Those are all things that the bank can get credit for. And that's something that, we tend to be passionate about things that we know much more than things that we've done. And so knowing from my own personal experiences, the more I get involved with community organizations, I'm involved with a couple of them, I find myself writing checks to those organizations. Well, I didn't write checks to them until I started volunteering there and got to know those organizations. So keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind that when a bank goes for their CRA exam, half of the CRA exam is based on their loans. And so because of that, and because loans is how banks make money, they're going to be much more interested in loan opportunities probably than they would be in making a grant. If they're interested in both grants and loans, probably they're going to be interested in making a larger loan, or they might make a little bit of margin on it than in making an equal amount towards a grant. So build a relationship, figure out what their needs are, talk to them about their strategy, and then also kind of learn some of the things that are going to be important to them. So one of the things that we have that can help, we have a couple of things I'd like to talk to you about, and I can take some questions. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about CRA and how to work with banks, we have something on our website called CRA One Source, and we have flyers for these in the back. This is a compilation of a wide variety of guides and video tutorials on understanding the CRA. And I would direct you to two specific things that make it easy to understand it, relatively speaking. One is, if you go to CRA One Source, there's a CRA for Bankers quick reference guide. It's a maybe 10-page guide for understanding CRA basics for bankers. That's the intended audience. But I tell you, if you go in there and you read that, then you'll have an understanding about the different terms that banks are going to be thinking about, and you'll be able to speak the speak. So a few things to keep in mind there is all of their CRA activities have to be are targeted towards low to moderate income populations. So if you're an organization, if it's the American Red Cross, they do great things. They do great things for everybody regardless of income. Probably not going to get much CRA credit for serving, for donating to the American Red Cross. But if you're able to say 90% of our youth that we serve are free and reduced lunch, 86% are low income, start talking those demographics, they're going to care about that. Race, ethnicity, gender, age, all might be important things, but they're not going to get any credit based on that. But that CRA guide for bankers, that quick reference guide that we have on our website is really helpful in explaining that. There's also a video that's about 7 minutes long from the San Francisco Fed that very eloquently conveys CRA in easy to understand terms. Let's see, so something else I wanted to share with you is something called Investment Connection. So Investment Connection is something that we started at the Kansas City Fed about 7 years ago, I believe. And really the purpose behind it was to help serve as a bridge between community organizations that would have a CRA relevant opportunity and bankers that were looking for additional opportunities. And so what happens is we have an online platform. You can go out and you can submit a proposal outlining a specific need that your organization might have. We're going to ask for a few things. You have to have audited, at least 1 year audited returns, tax returns, to kind of show that it's some longevity here, that you're a legitimate nonprofit with some good standing. We're going to ask you to document kind of who's your target audience and what this initiative serves. Now, it could be a request for a loan, or it could be a request for a grant or a service opportunity. So what we'll do is we'll take that opportunity and give it to our bank examiners and say, okay, if you are going into a bank to review their CRA activity and they gave you this proposal as something that they've supported, would you give them credit for under CRA? And through that process, we can help that organization with some technical assistance in helping them make sure they get their ducks in a row to properly document, the audience that they're serving. And if the examiner says, yes, this is something that I would get credit for, well, then we make those proposals available to our bankers. And so what that does for you is, one, it helps validate and helps get your ducks in a row. For the banker, it takes the guesswork out, because as risk adverse as they are and as complicated as CRA, they're going to be more willing to invest or support a community organization if they know that the Federal Reserve has already taken a look at it. So it doesn't cost anything to submit a proposal. It doesn't have to be like a 20-page proposal. If you have questions about it, I'd be more than happy to provide additional assistance, but the information is on this card. We have it in the back. And in the last, since we started this, like I said, I think 67 years ago, we've helped connect $30 million in funding across our 7 states. So no guarantees that you're going to get funding, but it does give you that opportunity. Something else with it too is we make the proposals available to bankers online. We also have forums that we host typically about once a year in different markets. But I would encourage you, if you do this, is to not stop there, but then to proactively go out and start talking to bankers. Invite somebody to coffee and say, you want to talk to learn more about their CRA strategy. And then let them know, hey, by the way, we have this opportunity that's already embedded by the Federal Reserve Bank. So it's definitely something that you could proactively take out and take advantage of as well. So with that, one other thing I wanted to share with you, I don't have copies of it, but I can get you copies of it. After the rewording that was done in 2016 on better defining the relevance of digital inclusion with CRA, the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas prepared a CRA guide for bankers to help them understand how they could piece things together and provide some more information. And it can really help build a case for digital inclusion in CRA. I didn't bring that. It's like a 20-page guide, but that might give you some more ammunition that you can use. And I shouldn't say ammunition, it's bad. Another tool you can use to build your case.
To me, I can send it.
Okay, I will do that.
Cookies.
There you go. I'll give you more cookies. Yeah. So that's my CRA in a nutshell, the short version of it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
What does a timeline look like for the investment connections? Is it an open enrollment every year? Is there?
Yeah, great question. So it's open enrollment. You can submit a proposal whenever. We typically say it's a 2-week turnaround time, and I had them sometimes be as quick as a day. It just depends on whether or not our bank examiners are out in the field or if they have the time to do it. But typically say 2 weeks.
What is the minimum and maximum amount of the grant award?
Great question. So there's none. I will say that, again, rule of thumb, I don't want to limit anybody. Rule of thumb that I've seen grants as low as $5,000. I can't say I've seen a lot of $100,000, $1 million grants. We have had some loans that were in the millions. The loans might be, for a revolving loan fund, for a small business loan fund, a housing loan fund. If your nonprofit needs just a loan, then a bank could look at that.
So when doing so, from our experience, my experience anyway, and other nonprofit executive directors that I have mentored and coached, that it's hard for small nonprofit organizations to get along. One, they go by the executive director's personal credit and not the organization's credit. So is that still the same? Is that changing, or you have a track record and you have done your external audits and they have come up as far as being not a risk?
So I can't really speak to the likelihood that a bank would decide to make that loan. That's outside of my focus area. All I can speak to is what we could do is validate to say, if the bank did make that loan, would they get credit for it? Now, the bank goes through other kinds of exams where they're looked at, are you making sound business decisions? And so there are certain limitations in that the regulators also put on the bank to say, support the community, but don't get, watch yourself. So, question over here? Yes.
So as I'm listening, and I've been involved in a bunch of activities.
Sure.
You started off by making the point that the origin of the Community Reinvestment Act was this age-old legacy of discriminatory housing loan. And yet, as I'm listening, what I'm hearing is efforts to make banks permeable to the community, not so much the other way around. And so a question, for example, is, how would I go about figuring out for a particular bank what their CRA basin of credit is? And we know, of course, that banks are reluctant to locate in the neighborhood. So is it by census tract, or ultimately, is there at least an inclination in the law to say they should be trying harder than outreach? Is that a developmental area?
So I think maybe I answered your question in a couple ways. One, all banks, their assessment areas is public information. So you should be able to ask, call a bank and say, hey, I'd like to know more about your CRA initiatives. I speak to whoever handles CRA of your bank. And that person would be able to provide you with information on what their assessment area is. I think it's fair to say that the regulations are not perfect, and there's ongoing discussion in figuring out how they can be revised. And the challenge, I think, is making regulations that are meaningful and will make a difference, but that aren't so restrictive that they're going to weigh down the small community banks with lots and lots of regulations and put them at a disadvantage from like a cost perspective. So the regulations, there's ongoing discussion that regulations are not perfect and they need to be adjusted. Yeah.
So can you give an example, either something that's happened here in Kansas City or other locations, of an example of a grant that was given, the program that it was for, whether it was a smaller one or a larger one? What was it for? Can you give some examples of what's been given out already in the digital inclusion arena?
In the digital inclusion space, that's a great question. So as Carrie knows, my work on digital inclusion, I've really started focusing in on digital inclusion specifically the last several months. I believe Connecting for Good has received some grants around digital inclusion. You have to check with Tom, but I believe they have. One thing that I've heard from banks is, and this goes beyond digital inclusion, the need in the community is always greater than the resources, right? And so their dollars are limited. They don't have just this big, huge, multi-million-dollar CRA bucket. And so what I've heard from banks is they have an interest in doing things that aren't as expensive for them, but they can still make an impact. So donations of refurbished computer equipment, volunteering service in teaching digital literacy classes. Those are things that I think, based on my initial conversations with banks, there seems to be a keen interest in exploring some of those opportunities. not to say that you wouldn't be able to get it in a grant or a loan, but, because I think you could, but.
I guess from my perspective, it feels like this is something the banks need to do, right?
Yep.
It's part of it. So why would they be so reticent to do this? Or why does it feel like maybe as Bill was saying that we have to be so aggressive in presenting them as something that they're willing to do? If they have to do this anyway, why is there such scrutiny?
So they have
What
to
is
do.
actually?
Sure. So why the push? Why do you guys have to? Why would an organization have to push so hard? Because banks have to do CRA. Banks do have to do CRA. They have lots of options in how they could accomplish that, and so they could accomplish everything they need in theory, by working only in housing initiatives or only in financial education initiatives. So it's not that they do have to do stuff. It's a matter of making compelling cases to why they should pick your stuff.
So it's like applying to a foundation.
Yeah.
So, Jeremy, is this something that we as a coalition could facilitate for some of our members? That would it be a better sell to the banks if they showed that we've got 5 organizations that are working as a coalition to implement these plans in the community? Would that?
So again, just my take on it. People in this region and in most places like to be part of something that has already shown some success and part of a coordinated, collaborative initiative. The first ask, so before I worked at the Federal Reserve, I worked at a nonprofit. And the first grant was always the hardest. It's a lot of times people would be willing to do a matching grant. So showing a track record is.
And that makes sense because, we've got a digital inclusion fund in Kansas City that Google helped to seed and that has had some community support, but we're seeing that support just not take off. And I think that really, we have ourselves to blame, that we need to be more engaging with the business community to support funding like the Digital Inclusion Fund and like attracting banks to this opportunity. And I think maybe to add to the answer on Carrie's question, working for an organization that has been called out for just needing to recognize a problem and go solve it, there are myriad problems to be solved. And so where those problems are identified and solutions are identified more easily, that's where, unfortunately, a lot of the attention goes. So if there's a huge problem but no one's identified how to solve it, those are the migraines that probably we need to be identifying and showing to these organizations they can fund.
Absolutely, and a couple of follow-up points to that. One of the things that Carrie mentioned, I believe, earlier, we've been working on a survey, and it's my goal to help articulate the importance of digital inclusion across the community development spectrum. I think there are a lot of organizations, in my opinion, there are a lot of organizations that work in workforce development, or maybe in housing, or in small business, or in education that maybe see digital inclusion as a different sector, when really it's foundational to all of those things. And so I think one of my goals this year is to better articulate the digital inclusion landscape in Kansas City and the needs and the challenges and opportunities to funders in the community. And so within the next month or so, we will be sending out an electronic survey, and I would love to get your perspectives and your take on the work that you're doing, the challenges that you see, the types of audience you serve, how you're measuring success. And then my goal from that is to help tell that story to funders.
So we had a question, Lazone Gray Topeka is asking about information on the blue card that you mentioned earlier.
That's Investment Connection.
And is that
and I can send out in a follow-up. I can send out information on Investment Connection.
You send me all that information. Yep. I'll send it out to everybody. But I don't know if that person is on our email list. Yes.
I believe he is, and I'll look it up, and I'm just.
And I have his email address too.
I'm linking it in the comments here, so I'll find it online.
Sure. Come back to you. I think was there a question over at this table?
Question about the risk and whose risk it is. If a bank were to make a grant to Connecting for Good, and for whatever reason it folded a year from now, would the inspection process hold that against them?
No, not on a grant necessarily. I think that more applies to loans.
And why would it be different with the loan? I mean, assuming that they follow we're talking about a more risk tolerant loan to begin with, and isn't it the public's money, in fact, under the law? And so I'm wondering how this question of the conservatism of the bank becomes in the foreground of thinking. It just doesn't quite make sense if there's an actual mandate to take a certain amount of their profits and reinvest it in.
So I think maybe there's a couple things getting mixed up there. One is, in general, when it comes to making loans, right? There's certain parameters that banks are restricted to not. You don't want banks to get too crazy and wild with the money, right? Because it's that money is really my money and your money that we loan to the bank, right? So there are certain limitations there. There are certain limitations there. The grants are different. They're not. It's not necessarily that, because you're not planning on getting the money back in the grant. Their aversion is going to be in, is this grant that I'm making to this organization, is that going to count for my CRA obligations? If it's not, and a lot of times the bank will do it, like, you know what you're doing is awesome, this isn't going to count for our CRA obligations, I'm going to give it to you anyway. A lot of banks give out grants that don't count for CRA. Because they're doing it for the betterment of the community, and it looks good in the community. If they're saying, okay, I need to do so much under CRA, and if I don't get it right, then I'm going to get a bad review of my CRA exam. Well, they want to make sure they're not going to get a bad review because that's bad in public health.
Who does that review? I mean, who's administering this test? I don't know that.
The bank examiners, yeah. So all banks are regulated by either the OCC, the Federal Reserve, or the FDIC. Yep. All right. If there's no other questions, I'll be around for a while. So thank you.
So were there any other updates or last minute questions or concerns? Okay, Rick.
Oh, there was, bear with me, there was something on the Twitter I thought we should talk about that came up.
We have 5 minutes.
The what? No. God, no, it's, okay, here we go. The 2020 census. 2020 census is relying heavily on internet responses. And there's a map now, census, what's it called? Like hard to report areas, and you can zoom into Kansas City and identify the the neighborhoods, the census tracts that had very low reporting rates, response rates in the 2010 census. So these numbers, are significant to all kinds of things, from government funding to. So it looks like something we should get involved in further as a coalition. Whether the library, I'm sure you guys are probably looking at that. I believe Kamiko Gilmore in the city manager's office will probably be engaged in this again. She led our 2010 census effort, but the map also shows internet connectivity by neighborhood. So there's some things we should keep on our radar.
Okay, so next month our guest speaker is going to be Sarah Martin Anderson from the health department, but I will try to get someone else in addition to Sarah to talk about the specific issue and see how we can address it.
Locally, it's going to be the same challenge. Kids in public schools are going to an online enrollment as well.
Yeah.
They already done.
Yeah, they already
They did that this year, yeah.
So I think that finding those same areas are going to be the exact same ones that we have.
And the library offered opportunities for parents to come in on that enrollment, and we had a huge turnout. So
yeah, that's exactly.
Okay, good, thank you, Rick. That's a really good initiative. Anyone else? Okay, great. Well, that's the end of the meeting officially, and now you have time to either stay and talk or you're free to go. And don't forget to sign in if you did, and also to get your cards validated.
Say goodbye to our online friends.
I text the client, I haven't heard back from him. We'll see if he's available today at 1:30. We'll see.
Okay. Right, David Biggins, Housing Authority. Yeah. I'm going to put a link to this article I just discussed on this video.